So this is the rubric that, this is the paper version of the rubric that our reviewers complete. So this will look a bit different than what you're used to seeing in Nuventive, where it's digitally hosted. And so we have our goals or student learning outcomes at the top that are nestled under a drop-down menu. And then for our specific rubric items, such as goals or SLOs, are concise, clearly worded, detailed, and limited in scope. We have that EAR rating, the excellent, acceptable, and revised, and those are also located in a drop-down menu. So this is kind of like our hard-working version of that rubric, and then what y'all complete in Nuventive is instead our digital version of this rubric, but just providing this kind of orientation so y'all are able to see what it looks like as a paper form. And if for any reason, it helps you to complete a paper form prior to the digital rubric, we're happy to provide this to you as well through email. Perfect. So as an IE reviewer, you are likely already familiar with the IE review process, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit more depth in the next slide. But we do have up here on the left our official process that starts with our IE authors, moves on to our department head, direct supervisor, college division IE representative, and then finally our final reviewers, the deans and vice presidents, and then our IER department. And so over on the right, you'll see there is that completed digital rubric. And so, if we'd gone back, you would notice that the rubric items are the exact same, but those ratings, EAR, are nestled under the drop-down menu there. So all of our processes, our assessment processes, they start with our IE author who enters the data into Nuventive. It's then reviewed simultaneously by the direct supervisor and the IE representative or the department head, and they provide feedback through that rubric. If you do request revisions, you would just email the IE author to let them know that those revisions are requested and need to be completed. They will communicate to you when those are done, or hopefully they'll communicate to you when those are done. And then that review is available for the dean or VP. And so at that stage, it moves on to that purple circle in the bottom right, where the plans and results are reviewed by the dean or VP. They're able to complete that rubric, or they're able to view that completed rubric, that has been done by the department head, the direct supervisor, and the IE representative, and use that in addition to the IE 4-column assessment report to complete their own review. And then once those reviews are all complete, we consider that a close or the completion of the IE assessment cycle. And so our actual processes is that feedback is provided in the rubric using standardized ratings, and we'll be working through some of those today. There are comment spaces in the rubric that provide specific direction of the requested changes if you do request revisions. And then as soon as that's completed and you click the save button in the upper right corner, this rubric is saved in the platform. And so that is what helps the availability or makes it available. So what we're going to have going on today is that we're going to have 3 kind of moving pieces, and Tracy and I are very comfortable with these, and so y'all will see them up on the screen that you're currently watching, and they'll be moving back and forth there between our slide and our poll. And so that's why it's helpful for you to have your secondary screen that has the actual poll pulled up, more similar to what's in our upper right-hand corner there, where you'll be answering and rating items as excellent, acceptable, or revised. There in the middle on the left, those are our slides, and so those will be our working examples. And so you'll see those up on the screen in addition to what's there on the bottom right, where we'll be looking at our poll results as you rate these examples. Tracy, if you don't mind clicking, give me one series of arrows. So our green arrows here, I want to pull your attention to some of these first common elements. And so these are our rubric guidance, our rubric items. So SLOs are concise, clearly worded, detailed, and limited in scope. So you'll see there that those stated at the top of our working examples on the slides. So those are our yellow boxes. You'll see them at the top of the poll items that you'll be rating. So kind of help that alignment of the example number 2 on the screen, the poll number 2 that you'll be reviewing as a reviewer. And then on the bottom, as we look at our polling results, you'll see also that same statement so that we know that we're looking at the results for the examples that y'all have just reviewed. If you don't mind giving me my final arrows, perfect. And so then our next items in common are our EAR ratings, excellent, acceptable, and revised. And so as the reviewer, you'll have those ratings available to you in the poll. and then you'll see those mirrored again in the results. So before we move in to going through the first example, are there any questions about this process or any questions I can answer? All right, if not, Tracy has put that link in the chat if you did not already have it from the email. So go ahead and get that pulled up on your next screen, or on your secondary screen, pardon me. And then Tracy, if you don't mind, let's move into our first example. So example number 1, we are looking at the rubric item goals are concise, clearly worded, detailed, and limited in scope. We want to make sure that goals are not bundled together. And so our sample entry right here, you'll see that in the left-hand column for goals is a service request. And so that is our assessment method type. And then service requests will be responded to in a timely manner. So that's our goal explanation. It is an active goal, and it was assessed in the 2020 to 2021 cycle and will be assessed in the 2021 to 2022 cycle. So as a reviewer, if you were reviewing a program or unit that had that statement as their goal, would you rate that as excellent, acceptable, or revised? And so go ahead and answer that in the poll that you have pulled up on your secondary screen. And we'll give everyone a couple of seconds to read through that again and answer the poll. All right. So it seems that we have a pretty even split. So definitely no one said revised, which is good. As you know, from the IE perspective, we also would not have marked that for revisions and asked for any revisions. This is one that we probably would have given an excellent rating to. It hit all those items that we're looking for. It is concise. It isn't, you know, wordy or loquacious. It's clearly worded. It's detailed, and then it doesn't assess or look at multiple items. So it's not looking at, you know, multiple things that the unit is going to be accomplishing or doing. And so one of those, you know, tips or things we'd be looking for is a lot of commas or the use of the word and to me, you know, those normally tip us off to multiple items. So perfect. All right. So let's go on to example number 2. So this is an academic example. So SLOs are concise, clearly worded, detailed, and limited in scope. Again, outcomes are not bundled together. And so for our SLO, we're looking at our ecological research. And so that's our, you know, SLO name. Graduating students will be able to evaluate ecological theories and research. This is an active learning outcome, and it was assessed in the 2020 to 2021 cycle and will be assessed in the 21 to 22 cycle. So take a couple of seconds, read through that again if helpful, and then go ahead and write that on the poll. All right, so we have a bigger split here between excellent and revised. So this is one that we would have likely marked as acceptable. We might have requested a revision since they did use that word and in there to, you know, identify multiple items that are being assessed, because it can be difficult sometimes if a student, you know, is successful at research, but maybe not at the other item that you have listed. How do you report those assessment results? But this is one that does kind of answer all those, all the things that we're looking for. It's concise, clearly worded, detailed, and limited.
Can you go back on that, Allison? Let me look at that again, please.
Yeah, Tracy, would you mind going back? Okay.
Students will be able to. And you said because of the use of the word "and," that it would be something that you want to revise over? Is it acceptable?
So we would have marked this acceptable in the IE providing a review. This is one that I would have marked acceptable. You know, it is concise, it is clearly worded, it does give me the details I need. And it isn't it isn't assessing too many items, especially whenever you get in the STEM area. Sometimes theory and research are the same thing. And so that's one of the things that we've learned in working with our, you know, STEM programs and everything. But that use of "and" there, that can be one of the things that tips you off that it is, you know, potentially assessing multiple items. And so that's one of the reasons that we would have marked this as acceptable rather than excellent. But this maybe wouldn't have driven us to request a revision. Yeah. All right, so example number 3, perfect. So goals are stated in terms of observable, measurable outcomes. A hint on this one is that they represent a quality improvement rather than a task. And so for this goal, we're looking at study abroad. We are going to create a marketing plan to promote student participation in study abroad programs. So this is an active goal. And again, it was assessed in the 20 to 21 cycle and will be assessed in the 21 to 22 cycle. So as a reviewer, go ahead and read through that again and then give that your rating as excellent, acceptable, or revised. All right, excellent. Yes, this is one that we would have marked as revised as well. So I'm sure y'all picked up on the, good job, Dr. Hendricks, on the fact that they, talked about completing a task rather than looking for an improvement. And so, if you create a marketing plan, or if you create a survey, or if you, go to the homecoming game, that kind of stuff, well, you either do or you don't. And so your assessment may not be as robust or as meaningful as you want it to be, because you're not really getting at the reasoning of why you're doing those things or what the outcome of them are. You're simply looking at an output of your program or unit. So we're looking for something that, as that note says, represents a quality improvement rather than a task completion. So that's one of the things to keep an eye on as you're reading through your goal statements or your student learning outcomes that you could request a revision on, is ask them to maybe dive deeper into that SLR goal to look at the outcome rather than the output. All right, let's look at number 4.
You two faked me out. I was so used to you having different responses. I was waiting for another red line. Good job.
Courtney gave me the cue. She said, revise, and then revise.
Oops.
All right, so this is looking at an academic program rather than a goal, but we're still looking at similar stuff. The SLOs are stated in terms of measurable knowledge, skills, or behaviors. So the student learning outcome is looking at design research, and graduating students will be able to design a research study to test a hypothesis. This is an active SLO, and you can see those plan assessment cycles there at the bottom. So go ahead, read through that again, and then give that your rating as a reviewer. All right, so it looks like we have 100% marked this as acceptable. This is one that we would have felt comfortable marking as excellent, but acceptable definitely makes sense because you might still be pushing them for more of a quality improvements. They talk about students designing a research study, and so that is something that can have varying results. In the process of designing that study, it isn't necessarily if it is or isn't done, but you could definitely push them to talk about maybe more the quality aspect of that rather than designing the study itself. So acceptable absolutely makes sense. This is one we would have also felt comfortable marking as excellent. All right, Tracy, if we can look at example number 5.
My apologies.
Okay, so number 5, we're moving on to another rubric item. So we want to provide specifics about how results are obtained. And so this has moved on to look at assessment methods. So in our assessment method description, we want to know what is assessed, who administers the assessment, who is assessed, a description of the measure, when the assessment is administered, and where it's administered in the program or in the processes of the unit. So we moved on from the goal, but you definitely want to continue to read those goal statements because those will help provide orientation. And now we're looking at our assessment method column. So this is a survey. So they did identify the assessment method type. Visitors to the center will be emailed a survey following their visit to assess their satisfaction with the services and offerings of the Arts Center. Our standard of success for this assessment method is that 90% of the visitors will respond that they were satisfied or very satisfied with the service they received. So as a reviewer, would you mark that assessment method, keeping in mind that we are looking for those bits of information about how the results are obtained as excellent, acceptable, or revised? All right, so we have a pretty even split, excellent and acceptable. This is one that we would have most likely marked as acceptable. They maybe did not include very clearly who administers the assessment. Is the director responsible for sending that out? Do they have a student concierge that sends that out after the visit, a GA maybe. And then, you could include some more information on the survey itself. If in the satisfaction, maybe there are, 2 specific questions that you're using to rate satisfaction rather than the average outcome of the survey, you could maybe talk about that as well. So having a little bit more information in there would have been appropriate and appreciated, but definitely, not required. So this is one that we would have marked acceptable, but y'all both marked it as not needing revision. So we are definitely on the right track. So, example 6. All right, so we're looking at the same rubric item, but now we're looking at this for student learning outcome. So keeping in mind that we want to know these assessment method information of what's assessed, who administers, who's assessed, etc. We're looking now at a project. So human impacts project completed by all students at the end of the program. Our standard of success is 80% of the students will score a 3 out of 5 or higher on the rubric used to grade the project. So go ahead and rate this on the poll, or read through it again if you need to, and we'll give everyone a couple of seconds. All right, perfect. So yes, this is definitely one that we would have marked as revised. We kind of know what it is and we know who does it. So even if they hadn't included the student part, because it's an SLO, we know it's students. And they talk about the end of the program, so it's safe to assume it's graduating students, but there's still a lot of missing information. So yes, this is one that we would have marked as a request for revisions and sent back to the author to expand on. So good job. All right, example 7. Okay, so this is a new rubric item. We are looking at methods are clearly aligned and matched with the student learning outcomes. So this is an academic one. So we are going to be looking at our assessment methods and then going back to look at our student learning outcome column. And so our assessment methods, we're looking at a survey. The STEM lab employees will complete a safety training at the start of their employment. Following the training, they will then complete a survey distributed via Qualtrics and will be asked to rate the quality of the training they received on a scale of 1 to 7, where 7 indicates very high quality. Our student learning outcome is looking at safety procedures, and they want to know, they want to assess employees of the STEM lab. Will they be able to accurately follow safety procedures? So as a reviewer, would you mark that alignment as acceptable, as excellent, acceptable, or revised? Okay, so this is one that we actually would have marked for revisions. So Tracy, if you don't mind, Tracy, if you don't mind going back.
I was trying to use my little cheat sheet note at the top. Who's doing it, where, the outcomes, but it's revision. Oh, glory. Okay.
So we are looking at a different rubric item here. So here we're looking at the alignment between the methods and the student learning outcomes. So in our assessment methods, they talk about a survey, they talk about who it's being distributed to, when it's being completed, what is assessing. So they hit all those items, but now we're looking at alignment. So it talks about following. So we're going to start with our student learning outcome. What they want to know and assess is, will employees of the STEM lab be able to accurately follow safety procedures? So they want to know, will you be able to be safe? Do you know this information? And then the survey that they're using, if you look there kind of at the bottom in the second sentence, they talk about the survey is actually going to be assessing the quality of the training that they receive. So we're not really looking at if they learned anything from this training, if they learned what we want them to know, if they will indeed be able to follow safety procedures. What they're trying to ascertain in that survey is if the people that took it thought it was a good training, which is what we want to know from y'all later. If y'all thought this was a good training, but the alignment is not there. So that's one where we would send it back, request a revision, point out, you talk about the quality of the training that maybe doesn't support your student learning outcome, please revise.
Well, Allison, I failed to clearly read number 7 at the top, because I would have read that one, then I would have given you a different answer.
Oh, okay. Yep. So yeah, we definitely want to make sure that we are clear on our rubric items in the rubric as well. But yeah, that would have gotten you. So.
Yeah, Courtney's not helping me in it.
You want me to delete that poll from the video
There you go.
or redo the poll.
We'll redo
It's a good learning experience for everybody.
it.
Now they're on their toes, Allison.
There you
Oh,
go.
yes.
You
Had to
ready
throw
for eight?
Had to throw in a curveball. All right, so number 8, we are looking at a student learning outcome here. Methods are clearly aligned and matched with the SLO. So we are not yet onto another rubric item, but a different one than before. So I'll let y'all read through the assessment method information and then read through the SLO information to see if you feel that there is or is not alignment there between those two entries. All right, so number 8, this is one that we would have marked as excellent. Whoever marked as revised, would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, because I went back to your definition, and when I looked at the definition, I went back to the SLO, and I looked at the SLO to make sure that it was under the assessment part, each thing that's being asked. Come on, Courtney, it wasn't that difficult.
I got nervous, like being on the screen. I was like, y'all are done, and I'm still reading because I'm like double checking, and so it's like, let's just go for it. But the SLO though, it's too wordy, right?
I'm sorry.
I know that's not what we're assessing right here, but or not. I know that's not what our poll is about. But
Yeah, Tracy, would you mind going back to number 8 in the slide? Let's take a look at that again. Okay, so what were you saying, Cece?
I was just curious if the SLO itself is like too much. When we talked about being very concise before, like it sounds great, but I didn't know if it's not.
Yeah, I mean that is not necessarily what we were looking at in this
Yeah,
assessment.
understood. I'm just
It
curious.
might be a little bit longer than we would want, and so if you had something turned in like this, you might provide in the SLOs on the the concise, clearly worded rubric item that you might want to tighten the language up a little bit. But here we are kind of looking at the alignment. But yeah, that that is a good point. But we do feel that this is an example of excellent alignment. So this is one that we'd be very pleased to get in. All right, number 9. This one is longer, so I'm not going to read this one to you. Y'all take your time. Don't feel rushed. If we don't make it through all of the examples today, that's totally fine. But the rubric item that we're looking at here is for a support unit. So we're going to be looking at results are aligned with goals, assessment methods, and the standard of success. So we're going to be going across all 3 columns now. So you may want to start, left or right, kind of familiarize yourself with the goal, familiarize yourself with the assessment method, and then go on to read the results statement to see if you feel that there is alignment between those 3 columns for this entry. Okay. So on number 9, we are pretty evenly split again, and this is another one that we would have marked as acceptable. They kind of did the minimum of what was required. They had, their results statement in there. They talked about the number of visitors who responded to the survey. So there's the alignment there between the assessment method and the survey. They talk about the 83% satisfaction of the services. So there's kind of the alignment there at the standard of success. We know that the survey method supports the goal. They don't really expound on that. But because we know that there is alignment between the assessment method and the goal, and now we have alignment between the results and the assessment method, and the assessment method supports the goal, it's easy to kind of see across there, but it isn't quite as clear as we would want. So this is one that we'd mark as acceptable because they did do what was asked, but it could definitely be improved on.
Okay.
Any questions about this one? Or whoever responded revised, would you like to share some more insight?
Yeah, I did the revised. I put revised because I was looking under the assessment method, looking at who the person would actually be doing it. So I didn't see that jump out at me under the assessment method based upon what the goal was. So I just said it needed to be revised. But now hearing what you're saying, there is some degree of acceptability. That's fine. I get it. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we do have a tolerance because honestly, think about how disheartening it would be to the best of your ability, having completed a review and turn it in and get all revisions back. So we do have, if someone has done, the minimum of what needs to be done and the information is there and it makes sense, we do have that kind of acceptable. And then we also have excellent for like really stand out items that you definitely want to call attention to. So that's kind of what we're looking for there. But all right, number 10. So similar situation, but now we're looking at a student learning outcome. So results are aligned with the SLO, assessment methods and standard of success. So again, you might want to read through left to right, familiarize yourself with the student learning outcome and those assessment methods, and then read through the results and see if you feel that they're aligned across those columns there. All right, so we had an excellent and a revise. So this is one that we would have marked for revisions. Tracy, if you don't mind going back to the slide. So the one thing I want to point out is in the results discussion, we do have our N equals, we have our percent of students, but it talks about the percent of students who presented the portfolio with an average score of 83, whereas our assessment method is a comprehensive exam. So in this situation, we would definitely mark this for revisions and email the author to ask them to confirm that this is the result that should be reported for this item, or to maybe double check, what their assessment method results were, that kind of thing. To the reviewer, it doesn't make sense that we're talking about a comp exam, and then in the results, we're talking about portfolio presentation. Any questions on this one? Now, if they had talked about 90% of students,
Sorry.
no, you're good, completed, maybe took the comprehensive exam with an average score of 83, we kind of have the bare minimum information there. You could still send that back and request revisions because we do want a more robust discussion in that little bit of information of having simply completed the exam. That references the assessment method, but it doesn't reference at all the student learning outcome information where we're looking at the ability of the graduating student to identify the major historical trends in psychology. So even if they hadn't talked about the portfolio presentation there and had talked about a comprehensive exam, that would still absolutely make sense to send that back for revisions because they haven't really tied all those columns together. They just talked about, if it did mention a comp exam, they would have just talked about the assessment method, nothing on the SLO. So even in that situation, it would have made sense to request revisions, but threw a little trick at y'all to see if you caught the portfolio there. So, all right, number 11. So this one is still longer. So this rubric item, we're looking at discussions of results are clear, concise, objective, and substantive. So for this example, the goals and assessment method columns are still important, but we're going to be focusing on the results discussion. So definitely kind of read through those two left columns just to provide that orientation and familiarity, but focus most of your time on the results discussion itself, and then determine if you as a reviewer would give this an E, an A, or an R if you feel that the results are clear, concise, objective, and substantive. All right, so we have an excellent and an acceptable. So this is one that we would have marked as excellent. What we most commonly see, and having conducted our IER review last year on stuff is that maybe after that, those first two sentences, that's where a lot of people would have stopped, giving us the numbers of the colleges below. That's really good information. And then going further down into that discussion of some of the history, the context around the results, that provides that, the meat of the assessment that we really like to see. That's what helps it be really substantive. And so this is one that we would have marked as excellent. I want to point out real quick before we move on, the adjective, the top objective, that one can sometimes be confusing. What we're looking for there, just as an example, in this one where we do have a standard of success not met, if the author had gone on, instead of talking about the history of the challenge of getting students to apply, had instead said something like, these students here in East Texas, they just don't care about travel. They're not going to apply. That is not objective. That is really kind of projecting some negative feelings onto the situation and providing some information that really isn't, useful or appropriate in the results discussion. So that's one that we've had some questions on, is what do you mean by objective? And so that's what we're looking for, is that we aren't necessarily, I don't really like to use the phrase airing our dirty laundry, but we aren't, airing our dirty laundry in the assessment results. So that's maybe something that you're discussing with your department head or your direct supervisor or your peers as needed. So that, just since we have had some questions about that one as people are starting to begin their reviews, that's what we're looking for in that objective there. All right, so again, the same thing, but now we're looking at a student learning outcome. So the discussion of the results are clear, concise, objective, and substantive. So again, focus most of your attention on the results column, but definitely read through the SLOs and assessment methods to provide that orientation information to determine if the results are clear, concise, objective, and substantive. Okay, so we had an acceptable and a revised. This is one that we, would have marked as acceptable. In an ideal situation, we would have liked to have seen more information, a more substantive discussion. In this situation, they did, kind of do the minimum of what we're looking for. They have the number of students assessed. They have that percent completed that does align with their assessment method and their standard of success. So we're kind of, the review of this is comprehensive. As Dr. Hendricks pointed out, he was always looking to make sure that the assessment method talked about all those items that we're looking for. So we need to always keep in mind, we're looking at this as a comprehensive, cohesive report as well. But, we would love to see more discussion there, but they did give us the information that we're looking for. They are clear and concise, but they may not be as substantive as we would like. All right, 13. So this rubric item, our rubric is a little bit bigger, so we are going to click and remove that blue box, but the actions are aligned with the goals. So that's what we're looking for here. So this is going to be starting in column 4. That's where our actions are. So you're going to read through column 4 and focus a lot of your attention there on determining alignment with the goals. And make sure that you also read through columns 1, 2, and 3, because that's where your goal information is going to be. So Tracy, if you don't mind clicking again to remove that box. All right, so take your time, read through this example, and then at your leisure, complete that poll and let us know if you would mark this as acceptable, excellent, acceptable, or revised. All right, so for 13, we have an excellent and a revised. This is one that we would have marked for revisions. Tracy, if you don't mind going back real quick. A big focus of that is, as we all know, from the author perspective, if the standard of success is not met, there in that conclusion, the results, or if it is marked inconclusive, then we do require an action or use of results. And so in our action use of results, we want to actually be finding some kind of action or something that's being done, some kind of change or revision or consideration of the pedagogy or the services that are offered, keeping in mind, we aren't looking for a major overhaul. But if you didn't meet your standard of success, then you need to be doing something. And so simply stating here it's too soon to be able to tell the effects of the survey. Well, if you go back to the plan assessment cycle, this survey has been used for at least 2 years. It could have been used for longer. And so they've had at least 2 years to be able to tell the effectiveness. So you would hope by now to be able to know the effects of the survey. And so simply including that statement doesn't actually give us any indication on the action or the use of results at all. So it's actually not an action that is even there for us to be able to tell the alignment. So this is one that we would have marked for revisions and emailed the IE author, asking them to include an action that is more clear and detailed and actually does address a change or revision or consideration to the pedagogy of the services. All right, number 14. So same thing here, but we're looking at student learning outcomes. So again, this is a longer one, so take your time and read through it. And we may just work through one of the final examples. Tracy, if you don't mind going back just one to put up that blue box again. So again, this is student learning outcome, but what we're going to be looking for again is the actions being aligned with the learning outcome. So focus most of your attention on that final column, the action use of results, and seeing if they align with the student learning outcome and the rest of the information. And then, sorry, now if you don't mind clicking remove that box. Thank you, ma'am. All right. So 100% excellent, and this is what we would have said also, that was an excellent example, not only of an action and use of results entry, but of course, in being that robust and information driven, that alignment is there as well. So yes, we would also mark this as excellent. All right, number 15. So here we're looking at one of our final rubric items. And so only for the purposes of this training, the actual rubric is quite a bit longer and has a lot more rubric items to cover. But these are the ones that we noticed tended to be ones that our reviewers struggled with or had questions about. So we wanted to focus on these. But on this one, we are looking at an academic program. So we're looking for actions that are clearly based on assessment results, and assessment results are cited in the action. So here again, we'll be focusing on our action use of results column. Tracy, if you don't mind clicking off for that blue box. Thank you. We're focusing on our action use of results column, but making sure that we are familiar with what the results are in that column next to it to make sure that they do indeed, allude to or reference the results. Go through and read through that, and then the same at your leisure. Mark this as excellent, acceptable, or revisions, or as needing revisions. All right, so an excellent and an acceptable. So this is one that we would have marked as acceptable. It does have, the information in it. It does talk about an action that's being taken. It definitely provides alignment to the assessment method because it talks about it's a presentation. The students present a 10-minute PowerPoint. Our action use of results, talks about the draft PowerPoint prepared in advance. So there is some alignment there because we do know that the results are based off of the assessment method. However, in the action use of results, they're not, there isn't any discussion about this action use of result being implemented specifically because of the results that were obtained. And so that's, one of those items that would have pushed this from acceptable into excellent is having that mention of the results in the use of results discussion as to why they're taking this action. So this definitely works. They have provided more information, especially compared to that last example, but it just isn't quite ticked over into that excellent range. I think we have time to at least take a look at the final example. And so this will be our last one. And so we're going to be focusing on the same rubric item. So actions are clearly based on assessment results, and assessment results are cited in the action. So Tracy, if you don't mind clicking off, perfect. So you'll see that our action use of results entry is quite a bit longer, but keeping in mind that, just because it's a longer entry doesn't necessarily mean it's more substantive. But as we read through this entry, it talks about the marketing plan that was effective at helping increase applications. They identify who will be taking the action. The coordinator will continue collaborating with Marcom, who's involved, the time period this is taking place. But you'll see also that they include that percentage of 34% of total applicants. And so, we have that identified, in our results, maybe not that whole number, the 34%, but that information is pulled from the results. And then they go on to say to help increase applications from those underrepresented colleges. So we know that is underrepresented because of the information they provide in the results in that list. The coordinator is going to meet with advisors. So, this is one that, and I know if y'all want to click the poll, feel free, but in the interest of time, I wanted to make sure that we just talk through why this would be one that we would have marked as excellent. So this is one that, from the IE review point, we would have marked this as an excellent example of the alignment between the action use of results entry and the results entry. So, all right. Tracy, if you don't mind moving this forward, perfect. So we do have, if y'all attended any of our other trainings, you'll be familiar with that gold Nuventive login button. So what I want to point out is our deadlines. We had that deadline September 1st for all of our 2020 to 2021 IE reports. We are still working on that. By the 15th, we would like for our direct supervisors, department head, and IE representatives to have completed their review, to have communicated with authors on any revisions. And so we would like to have, by the 15th, all of the review decisions of either initial review decision of approved or final review decision of approved made. And so even if that's by the end of the day on the 15th, so that by the 16th, those reviews are available for our final reviewers, our deans and VPs. We would like for them to be having completed their review by the 29th of September. So we are able to close the cycle by the end of this month. That is our goal. So I want to point out those dates there. And so those will have been in a couple of emails that y'all would have received. Tracy,
And Allison, may I come over and chat with you when you have time for my departments? Because the deadline is September 15th, excuse me.
Yep, absolutely. I am happy to set a time to look over this, and we can meet, in the interest of social distancing, we can meet over in the journalism.
Sure.
Where we
That's how we met last time.
Yeah, and put it up on the screen and we can look through them. And if you want to set aside some time to work through either one review, just to make sure you're comfortable with it, or if you want to complete some reviews and then us look at them completed to see, like, this is how I marked it, or this is what I thought, to see if that was, correct, I'm happy to do that. And same thing for UCC. If you want to work through a single review together to make sure that you're doing the operations correctly, or if you want to complete a review or a couple of reviews and take a look at them to see if those are correct, either of those I'm happy to do.
When are you, can you send me some times when you are free that I can schedule a meeting with you, please?
Yep. I think we have a slide coming up, actually. Perfect. And Tracy put it in the chat. We do have a form to request help. And so if you need to email us or want the information or something, we do have this form available, and it's also at the end of our emails. But yes, I will shoot you an email with some of my availability, and we'll find a time to do that. And so, sorry, I cannot talk in writing what I'm saying. As y'all are department heads and IE representatives, if you want to let your deans or VPs know additionally that that service is available to walk through completing a review, you can let them know that too. So, all right, we also have available quite a few reviewer resources. And so in that green box, we have these instruction guides. And so we have the IE authors, which may not be something that immediately concerns y'all. But if you do get questions from your authors, or if you have sent back revisions and they aren't sure how to complete them, that instruction guide is usually very helpful to send them. And we also have the instructions for the department heads and direct supervisors as reviewers, the IE representatives as reviewers, and then they're kind of underneath that green box that I meant to include. We have the instructions for the dean, VPs, and final reviewers. And so those are review instructions on kind of navigation, what's expected, and they're shorter. They're like a page and a half, so they're easy to read through and refamiliarize yourself with what the expectations are by those due dates. We also have the reviewer manual, and so that is our longer document that has everything you would need to know as a reviewer. It takes you through navigation. It takes you through how to complete a review. It takes you through how to use some of those tracking reports to be able to keep up with the people in your program or unit who have completed their assessment reports or who have not completed their assessment reports, to help in that communication. And then we also have these snapshot videos that are available on our YouTube channel. And so while most of these are navigationally more supportive for our IE authors, we do have that locating rubric feedback and revision snapshot video at the bottom that you might find helpful if you just need some navigation information, because that will also cover the navigation of where you would complete the review as a reviewer as well.